We are now back online for the regional week, and this afternoon's topic is brought to you by the Atlantic Committee. So we have our technical director with us, Terry Adamson. So he's going to be the MC, the host for today. I just want to thank Roto to be presenting sponsor again this week. So Terry, up to you.
Thanks, Stefan. Good afternoon to everybody. It's still morning for me actually here. I'm on the West Coast. So it's 11 a.m., but everybody else is into their afternoon already. As Stefan said, this is our last regional session for Regional Week, and we are in the Atlantic region. We're going to be talking about triple glazing, referred to as a heavy topic. So with the trend towards more efficient products, the inevitable move to triple glazing is arriving in parts of the country as something new. And I found out recently, maybe not new to everybody. Our friends in Atlantic Canada are seeing this demand increasing ahead of the pull of regulation. Today, we have three of our Atlantic Canadian manufacturers that see this trend picking up speed. Consumers are looking for very efficient products in both new and retrofit applications. Rebate programs like the current Energy Star criteria is increasing the demand for triples in the renovation market. And then, of course, triple glazed products bring their own set of challenges. And today we're going to look a little bit closer at some of those challenges. So I'd like to welcome my guest today, Carl Ballard from Coltech Windows and Doors out of Debert, Nova Scotia, Alan Doyle from Global Windows and Doors out of Rexton, New Brunswick, and of course, Andre Doiron, from Alsco Windows and Doors in Moncton, New Brunswick. So Carl, why don't you tell us a little bit about Coltech and what you do for them?
I'm the president of Coltech. We are based in Debert, Nova Scotia. Have been producing windows and doors for several decades, and we also have manufacturing locations in Edmonton, Alberta, and North Bay, Ontario.
Right. And Alan from Global Windows, he's Fenestration Canada's one of the past presidents and currently the treasurer still, Alan, is that true?
That's correct, yes.
And with Global, so what do you do for Global in New Brunswick?
Well, for Global right now, I'm the VP of Engineering and Product Development. And so Global has been a manufacturer fixture in the East Coast for the last 20 years. And we've got dealers throughout Atlantic Canada, and so Atlantic Canada is our market, and it's the most interesting area for us to work in for sure.
And Andre, I think Andre, it's the first time you and I have met, so really happy that you were able to join us. I know that we've been on some calls together, but I don't think we've ever actually spoken. So tell us a little bit about Alsco and your role with them.
At Alsco, I'm the director of operations for the Moncton plant. So I take care of all the operations of across all facets of the business. So we have multiple locations across the Maritimes with the All Weather Group, which is our retail arm. So everything with regards to manufacturing, distribution, in that sense, we take care of that. Alsco's been around since over 40 years, so we've been doing windows and doors for a long time. We were with the Addis Group before, which was a Quebec governed company. After that, we've now been reacquired by the Glass 8 Group in Manitoba. So the Polar Windows, the Glass 8, the Accurate Door Windows of the world, we're all part of the same group now. So it's a new partnership on that side. So with regards to windows and doors, we've done a lot of it. We've been around the block for quite a long time, so have a lot of experience in that neck of the woods.
All right. Great. Well, again, thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate your time and your commitment to help and share the word about things that are changing in our industry. So, triple glazing. So, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about the increased demand that you're seeing for high performance products? Maybe not all triple glazed, but with a little bit of focus on triple glazing. And earlier, Carl, you'd mentioned that this maybe isn't such a new thing, that you've seen triple glazing and been doing triple glazing for a long time. But it seems like most of the country is starting to see this as something a little newer, or maybe I'm just blind to it because I live in British Columbia, where it's really a new thing. But Carl, tell us about sort of your experience with triple glazing and what's driving this sort of push towards high performance products with triple glaze.
Yeah, so we have we started doing triple glazing over 20 years ago, but it was really quite a niche product. There was not a lot of demand for it. It was probably less than 1% of our production. But over the last 10 years, something changed and we started to see more and more demand for it. It's really, really grown. And I think for two reasons. One are the building code changes and also the changes in tightening of the Energy Star requirements. But the other thing is just the benefits, the actual energy saving benefits. I think people are finding that on some projects they're able to save more on their HVAC costs than what it costs them to upgrade to triple. So those are the sort of the two reasons I think behind the growth and demand for triples. And it just sort of has been accelerating, I think, as more people start to realize, they're actually saving money up front on their build, and then they're saving on energy costs year after year. It really makes sense for them to go with the triple glazing option.
Mm-hmm. Alan, do you echo that through Global, or is triple maybe something a little newer for Global? What's your sort of vision of why we're seeing more of it today?
No, I think I can back up what Carl is saying. I think that there's to me it's almost like the when Energy Star adopted the new I'm going to say more progressive numbers. We did see the triples follow in that direction. I mean, there's some markets that we have where like I say, certain places, like when we sell into PEI, we better be prepared to meet Energy Star. There's a lot more builders that are making that their minimum criteria for the windows that are going into their homes. So as you see these targets move, and if they continue to say, Energy Star is going to be our target, as Energy Star moves, the number is going to move, and so then it's not just going to be triples, but how more advanced can we get in terms of the U values we can achieve. But plus, exactly, the other thing that Carl said was about projects. I mean, we're seeing that too, is more and more projects are coming where the architects are actually specifying U values, minimum U values for their product to be included. And the only way you can get there is with triples.
Yeah. Andre, you've been with different companies, it sounds like, and maybe some companies that were in some regions that adopted or accepted triples more readily. Is that the case with Alsco today? Is triples new for that region, or?
Not new. I mean, for triple glaze, we've been doing triple glaze since probably, I'd say more of a normal product offering since 2008, 2009. In 12 and 13, it really started to get, really popular. I think what we're starting to see too is the average consumer. So there's two things. The average consumer is also very well educated. They have access to, everything that Google can provide in the internet. So they're well educated, know what they want. They're starting to understand what U values are, and they're requesting that, coupled with the Energy Star guidelines. To meet certain criteria, it's the only way to get it is with triple glaze. So we're seeing a bigger demand on that. Within also on top of that, they're asking for different glass packages too, where they want not just a standard low E, they want a different low E on one side, different low E on the other side of the house, and all that is happening at the same time, including pumping it through in triple glaze. And like Alan said in PI, we're seeing a lot of triple glaze projects. Never mind, house lots. We're talking apartment buildings that the builder or the architects are concerned about, energy loss, energy retention, which is great. But it's pushing the product to triple glaze, so it's a bigger demand in our system now than we've ever seen before, and it's not going to go away. It's going to become more, more of a demand as time advances. So, obviously we, as manufacturers, prepared for that, and we try to do what we can to get that stuff to the customer and making sure it's top-notch quality at the same time.
Yeah. Preparing for it is a big challenge for a lot of companies. So over the last maybe decade or so, we've seen a real push to larger products, more glazing, big windows, really large door systems. almost every house now, certainly, when you're talking new construction, everybody's got a big feature window or a feature door. Outdoor living is become such a big thing. At what point are you faced with saying we're too big for triples? Like you just can't get to those sizes, or can you? Are you guys able to accommodate some of these really large sizes of products that we're seeing? So Carl, I'll start with you. What's your position there?
Yeah, I think we can, over the years, from when we first started doing triples, we had very limited, we minimized the size that we offered, and we were always getting a push to offer it in larger sizes. And so we sort of expanded the availability of it to larger sizes, but we're still, we still don't go as big with a triple unit as we would with a double glazed unit. So we still just sort of get that push. So, I want it in triple, and I want it this big, but you've got, the extra weight and the handling of it in the factory. And, I figure if we're having a hard time handling in the factory, what happens when somebody puts a baseball through that window, and it's, maybe on the second floor, or there's a big, slope difference out of the living room in the back of their house or something. And now you got to try to replace that window in the field. So that's, try to use that argument sometimes to talk people away from the larger sizes. But so we do still have a difference in terms of what's available for size on a triple versus a double, but it's not, I don't think it's as limiting as it used to be. I think, you can get, we can still get pretty big with triples, but not quite as big as maybe people want.
Mm-hmm. Alan, have you set like a rule of thumb maybe for something you can do in a dual as opposed to a triple, or how are you managing those demands for these large products?
So this is a developing topic within our walls right now. I mean, these are discussions that we're having internally. And part of the issue is that sometimes what we can do in our factory and handle and get loaded onto our truck with the systems that we have, because we're designed to handle windows. But the problem a lot of times comes not at our dock, but at our customer's dock. And it actually happened this week, where we got a letter from a safety committee from one of our dealers saying that this window was too heavy, and there should have been extra capability for the customer to be able to handle that window. So that's kind of an interesting twist that we had only just recently discovered. But and I also have one of my customers saying to me, how can I don't want to do triples. I want to do the best number I can get. What's the best Energy Star number you can give me without doing triples? Because I don't want to do triples, because my contractors are complaining about the weight of the windows. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So we have it. We're getting it on both sides. Like Carol said, people are asking for the biggest windows that they can do with triples, but we also have some people pushing back and saying, well, yeah, that's what you gave me, but maybe you should have told me it was going to be this heavy and I wasn't going to be able to handle it on the job site. So it's like I said, we're right in the middle of that. I'm going to say discovery process right now to find out how big should we go? When should we be advising our customers, of sizes? And for that, I'm all ears to anybody that has any ideas.
Has the solutions. Andre, you must have that solution. How are you dealing with big products? I mean, maybe we've discovered ways, like Alan says, to deal with them in our facilities, but can the product handle it? What about when you get out into the real world? So what are you guys doing there? How are you dealing with that?
So that's our biggest concern is after the plant. The plant's one thing, but after the plant is the next biggest hurdle. So we've installed weight systems where our ERP will give us, here's the approximate weight of the window, and we've locked down weight. So after 300 pounds, it's locked down. You can't confirm the order; it's dead. It goes to a panel of people that will then assess what can and cannot be done. And maybe the weight's not the one true only option, but it gives a good thing where once you have an order that's above the weight restriction, we want building plans. We want to see where the window's located, how high is it going, and then we'll discuss with the builder / homeowner / whoever's buying the product. Okay, it's over this weight. Do you have the capability to take it off the truck? So if we're going to a dock to dock, it's one thing, but a dock to job site is a whole different animal. Do you have a crane? Do you have bodies that can handle it? And here's what it weighs once it's done. It could weigh 450 or 500 pounds. Two guys ain't going to lift it. And then we offer the option of, okay, now we have to go to site glazing, which means we'll ship the windows separate outside with glass not installed on certain areas. So if you have windows like a half quarter window with a casement, you can unhook the sashes and get the weight out of that. Sometimes it's not possible with the design. It requires site glazing, which we can A, send a technician to do it for you on site, or B, which you're paying for, obviously. Or B, we're doing the customer will do it themselves, which we'll have to have a discussion of how to do it and what the repercussions are. So that for us right now is working, I'd say most of the time, but we need to know exactly what's, where is it going? Because we've seen occasions where, where they're saying, yes, it's only on the first or second story. And we end up going to the homeowner's house and it's actually open rafters 2 stories high. So you have nothing, you didn't even count for staging. The other thing we look at too is, like Carl said, is if the window were to fail for some reason, stress crack, seal failure, all these things, are part of our lives we have to deal with. Can we physically replace the thermal pane after the window is installed? So, someone that orders an 8.5 or 10-foot high window, and it's maybe it could be narrow, but can we get it to the household? There could be no path to get to the window to the thermal to the window. All these things have to be looked at, and we usually cut it off at 300 pounds to figure out what is it, but you need a team behind that, unfortunately, has to look at the whole thing. So building plans, site, elevations, they've got to take all that into account.
Yeah, so many details that we didn't worry about so much before.
Yeah, and one of the things too is that when you're doing bigger units, if you're using restrictors, that helps as well in operators. So yeah, we'll do this big window in triple glaze, but now we're adding a restrictor saying you can only open it 5 inches, because more than that, it's way too heavy. And the chances are you're going to blow the power apart trying to either crank it back in or close it back into place, right? So these things are, things to look at too.
And we get pushback. We get pushback on when we tell a customer, "Oh, we're going to put a restrictor on that," and they says, "Wow, what do you mean you had to put?" So there is still a bit of a learning curve in the market about dealing with triples as opposed to dealing with doubles, because that's something that we hardly ever would talk about when you're going with double glaze systems.
Yeah. So what about the actual sealed units? I think I picked up, Carl and Alan, I think you guys bring units in. Andre, I'm not sure about your situation, but how are your suppliers, accommodating these, the requirements for triple glazed units, and particularly in size? Are you having challenges on getting the units when it gets into triple glazing, Carl?
Well, we make our own units, our own IG units. So we haven't really, I guess, other than, the different, we're in some capacity issues where we needed to bring in some additional equipment as the volume took off, because we were kind of originally doing it off on the side, and then eventually got to the point where we couldn't keep up with it. But it wasn't really too bad in terms of fabricating the IG units, although I think we've all run into glass supply constraints, but it was more probably on the finished IG units, getting them glazed into the windows themselves, that we ended up bringing in a glazing assist crane to handle the weight of it, and just to make it safer, I guess. It's a bit slower. And so we find that people tend not to use it except for the really big units, just because it does slow them down a bit. But that was, again, part of navigating through the changes and different things to be able to accommodate the units.
Alan, what about you guys? Do you bring units in, or do you make your own?
No, we're making our own IGs as well, and I guess the biggest thing with triples has been its effect on our capacity, and so we've over the last couple of years we've increased our capacity, but we found that's been triples have a bigger impact on your capacity than doubles for sure. So, and the other thing is when it's the weight of the IG when it gets to the end of the line too. So a lot of times we would just have one person who would do the sealing application, pick up the IG, drop it on a cart, and away it goes. Now we've had to install a jib crane at the end of the IG in order to, these bigger triples are going into picture windows. We definitely need that. And also that's, like Carl suggested, we need that at the glazing station as well. So these are different things that triples have added complexity. And so while there's, there seems to be, when you're handling individual IGs, that doesn't seem to be our biggest issue. It's when everything gets together in the final assembly, when you get that 300-pound window, and that's where it becomes another challenge. But as far as the IG is concerned, I think we've accommodated that within our operations so far. But it's something that we do look to in the future. As future developments is like, okay, this is having a probably accelerating the rate of introduction of new technology for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
Just on Alan's point there about the capacity side of it, when you're doing a triple, it basically you can get two doubles through your glass plant for the same time it takes to do a triple. So you're trying to, you get a lot of triples going down on the window production side. It's not really affecting it so much, but now you need to, your glass plant can't keep up, so you run into those sorts of issues as well.
Yeah, I think the demand for automation and systems that can efficiently do triples is probably in everybody's future. Andre, how about you guys? What's your sealed unit supply look like, and what have you done to handle the triple side of that?
For us, it's the same as everyone else. I mean, we're making our own IGs in house, so we've had to adapt for equipment, lift stations. A lot of it's still done by hand for the lifting of the units, so that's a bit of an issue. So we still got some work to do there for lifting, but capacity is still a problem. The more triples you do, the more it hurts the whole line. Like Carl said, the end of the line doesn't really notice it on the assembly side. They'll just put it in an IG regardless of what it is. The thermal line, they really feel it. So that's been an issue. There's been a push for new technology too. So we've upgraded a bunch of equipment. We've done different things with regards to making sure the units are clean and everything else. Because now, on top of that, we're a little more problematic on the cleanliness of the thermal, where your surface 3 or surface 4 is now being sealed into the unit, which you got to make sure that's all clean when you're sealing it. So that becomes a bit of an issue. But capacity is probably the number one gripe. We've been fairly well. We've done some really big units that, looking back, we shouldn't have done, or we should have maybe put a hold on. That sort of happens. It's only after the fact you go, oops, that was an issue. But overall, we're doing it very well. We don't really, aside from capacity, it's the biggest issue. We've adjusted all of our carts, all of our, machinery and tools we use have been adjusted to take on triples. So it's, less of a problem. It's capacity.
Yeah, all three of you mentioned, cranes and things like that to be able to deal with these large, certainly triple units on the factory floor. And I can recall the guys in our shipping department in my previous life watching, units being handled by cranes and asking, well, that's all fine and good. We don't have cranes out in the world in our trucks, and on job sites. How do you deal with that when you put them into these big assemblies? So yeah, it's a challenge. So triple glazing obviously comes with other challenges when you get into sizes and options. It doesn't sound like you guys are faced with any of this, because you're making your own units, it's probably easier to adapt. But, are you making any adjustments with things like, internal grids, or, simulated divided lights using shadow bars, or some guys are doing internal blinds, or low E coating options, things like that? Are you faced with any changes or adaptations that you need to make on your lines to accommodate those things? Carl, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, originally when we started doing triples, we were using a 7/8 deep IG unit and Krypton gas. And, we weren't offering any grills with that. But over time, as we redesigned our window systems to be able to get to deeper triple glazed units, and, we began to have room to fit the internal grill bars in there and be able to offer that. So that, has been good. Of course, people always order, they want everything. They don't always understand, well, why can't I, I want a triple and I want grills. So, but, when it comes to SDL on triples, I think that's a bit of an oxymoron. And I really don't think, I think, you can have SDL or you can have triple, but you can't have a triple SDL. I mean, you can, but it really doesn't look like a divided light. There's just no way to disguise when you look at it from the side that you're going to convince someone. So I try to discourage it. We do offer it because people insist on it, but I always sort of want people to explain to the customer, you may not be happy with how it looks. If you've seen, an SDL in a showroom on a double glazed unit, it's not going to look the same on a triple glazed unit. So I really think it should be one or the other and not both, but unfortunately, you get people that insist on both. So I think it's, as much as you can, important to try to set the expectations ahead of time so that, they're not disappointed when they receive the product and start asking questions about why it didn't look the way it looked in the showroom.
Yeah.
And, mini interior blinds would be nice to do on triples. Again, you've got the space issue and, potentially the, gas fill issues. So, you're going to take a hit on your energy performance. Or, do you want the mini blinds or do you want energy performance? So I think you start to get into some trade-offs with some of these different options and triple glazing, and they don't always go well together.
Yeah. Alan, you guys, it sounds like everybody is faced with those dilemmas. The client wants what they want, but maybe they don't realize, what it is they're going to get. How are you guys dealing with some of these options when you get into triple glazing? Is it similar to what Carl's telling us?
Yeah, it's similar to what Carl said. And it's like we get, if we're doing a 1 1/4 or 1 3/8 triple, we can offer most of the options that you would normally see offer with double glaze. So one thing about mini blinds, when we're not actually making IGs ourselves with mini blinds. We outsource that to somebody else, and that supplier, I don't believe, is doing triples in mini blinds right now. The other one is SDL. Carl, a great point there, and it's one of those areas that I'm going to say we've dodged this one a little bit because we haven't really had a lot of feedback on the whole triple and SDL issue, even though we recognize that this is an issue. There's two ways of doing an SDL. You can put a grill bar in there, or you can put one of those they call it a
shadow bar.
The shadow bar, and the shadow bar works pretty good. But again, you need to double up on the shadow bar. So I mean, you just can't have one shadow bar. So we've kind of avoided this, trying to do that. It just really complicates the whole manufacturing process when you're doing triples and trying to double up on the shadow bar. At this point, I haven't even offered that. So
yeah, I can recall some issues that I saw with that. Andre, faced with the same challenges, grills, SDLs, other options that you're maybe having to limit when you get into triple glazing?
Yeah, so we've encountered the same thing, especially with Carl, like what Carl was saying, when you have not a good glazing package, you've got a 7/8 like that, you have an issue, you can't put grills in it. People don't understand the STL and that are still hardly, very, very aggressively requested. And, we've had the same issue where, put on triple glaze, it just doesn't look right because you have that thick glass package. Most with grills, we're fine on the most part. We have the package to take it. It's not an issue now. The STLs is basically the issue. It comes back to customer education and education to the salesman. The salesman right now, because the market is booming, they're so used to saying, yeah, we'll do it. It gets to the job site, it's like, oh, it's not what they're expecting because they don't see it that way, right? So, we're trying to get the salesman that to really take the time, explain to the customer, show them what it looks like, have something in a tote bag, like a sample, you can say, here's what it's going to look like. So that, your showroom sometimes doesn't have all the different things in it. So we need to make sure the education is there. That's part of the issue is making sure they have the right information. What they're getting is what they're expecting. We run into a lot of also issues with coatings, like I said before. So we have several coatings for low E in plant, and people want to mix a bunch of different coatings sometimes that just don't make sense because A, they don't understand how it works, or B, stuff that we don't even have simulations for because it's not normal. You don't normally seal those together. So we have that, as a learning curve too for the guys that they're asking for stuff that just doesn't either goes against your edge efficiency, so you're getting less efficient, or things that just doesn't make sense altogether. So we have those things we have to adjust. We have to make sure we have the proper documentation and the reason why it cannot be done or should not be done.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the Google research, right? Everybody thinks that they know more than they do. So, over the last number of years, we've heard quite a bit about, the development of thin triples and vacuum glazing. I still am not aware of anybody that's, readily supplying those products today. But, we're pushing into triple glaze territory for most companies now. So most guys are developing systems to handle these, 1 3/8 overall, or in some cases, 1 5/8 when you get into some of the passive house systems. Are we developing all of these really large products for a new technology that's going to come along at some point, maybe, that is actually going to allow us to do very, very thin triples or vacuum glazing? Do you guys see that this is a potential technology that's going to change the direction we're going today with our frame systems? Or do you think it's just pie in the sky and it's not going to happen? So Carl, what do you think about, triples or thin triples and vacuum glazing technologies coming our way?
Well, I think the thin triples seem to be fairly far away as far as I can tell. Vacuum glazing, we've done a bit with it, even in terms of glazing pocket versus double glaze, it's smaller than that. So we've done some testing with the vacuum glazing, and the actual performance of it, at least the products that we tested were not as advertised, and in fact not even as good as a triple glazed unit. So we've decided to not do a whole lot with that. So I think some of these newer technologies are exciting to read about and talk about, but I think they're a long way from being commercialized or something that we could readily transition to. And hopefully that day is going to come, but I think there'll be lots of time for us to adapt our products to support them. I think triple, more, like you said, we're putting the effort into designing the window systems to accommodate triples. And I think, for the next 5 to 10 years, that's probably where the future is and where the focus should be. At least I hope I'm not wrong, because that's what we're working on.
Yeah, I hear you. How about you guys, Alan? Are you, any sort of look down the road designs for thin triples or vacuum glaze systems?
In particular, I've been trying to get as much information on thin triples as is available in the market, and from what I understand, it's like anything that we're doing today we're going to be able to accommodate thin triples down the road, if it ever amounts to anything. And that's a big if, because it just seems that there's I'm going to say a lack of ready available information about how to turn thin triple technology into easily manufacturable product the way we do triples today. Mm-hmm. So until I'm going to say the curtain is drawn back on how to make that effective. We're going to concentrate on doing the best we can with triples. And one of the issues that I look at is the fact that in triple the triple design, with that center pane, there's really no mention of the composition of that center pane in the building code or any of the say 12.2, which addresses glass thickness. So so what can the glass thickness be? At this point, the only thing we can do is make the glass thickness of the center pane the same as what we use on the inner and outer pane. Because there's nothing that really tells us we can do anything other than that. So until that is kind of looked at, and I don't even know what you can do with thin triples.
Yeah, that's a great point. You'll be happy to know that Fenestration Canada is in a collaboration currently with other associations looking at this very topic, glass design, structural glass design, and how triples and quad panes, multi-cavity units play into that design challenge. So it is in the works. Andre, sort of same thing to you. Like, what do you think there's a future that's closer for thin triples and vacuum glazing than what we're designing our products to today for large overall IG units?
I believe that the future of that is not that far away. For vacuum glazing and other types of triples and thin triples, I think that the push is probably coming maybe a year or two, that there's going to be massive investments in R&D to try to push that as hard as you can. I think right now people are getting by with dual glaze and other triples that are it's not becoming a real hindrance on the industry to say. I mean, there's still guys that can still do a dual glaze unit that still meets Energy Star today. For the average homeowner, they're looking at an ER34 or better for the Energy Star. And if they can get it with a dual glaze or a triple, some still don't really care as long as you meet the requirements. A lot of guys have had to go to triple glaze to meet the requirements. Okay, but I think we're going to see a real push in the next 3 or 4 years to develop thin triples, vacuum glazing, heat mirror options. If you look at how a heat mirror works, you can get really good results by just using films inside your chamber, which is, again, you're reducing the weight, right? You're using a triple glaze. It's not a real triple glaze, but it's still doing the same thing with film versus glass, so it's reducing the weight. What Alan's talking as well is that when it comes to triple glaze in big units, could we thin out the center light? If it's a 4 or 5 mil we need, can we use a 3 mil in the center because it's not really exposed? But then there's a problem of it might need to be tempered because it's under a lot of stress heat from the low E. So all these things we have to try to evaluate what's the best option. We need some engineering behind it. But thin triples and vacuum glazing is not as far as we think it is, because things change fast in our industry, and we could turn around 2022, 2023, and all of a sudden there's some headway that's been made that we haven't accounted for.
Yeah. Interesting that you talked about films, like the heat mirror systems. There are some new technologies that are in the works and actually available in Canada that are using interior films in their systems. So that'll be really interesting, and they're touting some pretty incredible thermal performance values. So you might be onto something there.
On heat mirror, just to finish that off. I mean, with a quad, what they call a quad mirror, which is 1 3/8 overall, which again is not that big. It's only 2 lights of glass, and you're getting up to an R20. Sometimes certain thing, again, filled with krypton. The units are not cheap. We get it, but you're still really on the weight of a dual glaze. So your hardware, your packages can kind of take without killing you.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that technology progresses over the next little while. So triples, obviously, I think we can agree that triples are headed to becoming the norm, or certainly performance glazing packages, whatever those look like. Do you think that this is, going to be the demise of the slider window? Consumers love slider windows. I mean, they're, not only are they generally less expensive, but people like those designs for specific applications in their homes. In the city of Vancouver here over the last number of years, they've really driven their thermal performance requirements down through their Vancouver building bylaw. They've been at a 1.44 U value for a number of years, and they're going to a 1.22 U value on January 1st of 2022. This has all but killed the slider window market in the city of Vancouver. Do you think that there is life for the slider window, maybe in new designs, maybe a compression slider, or do you think that these targets are going to push a sliding product right out of the market at some point? So, Carl, are you guys looking at anything in slider products that are going to challenge these aggressive numbers as we move forward?
Yeah, I'm not convinced it's going to mean the death of a slider. I think, if you redesign it to get 1 3/8 glazing, and you can get some pretty good performance numbers, and of course you need to make the frame deeper to accommodate that more so than on a casement, because you've got the sash sliding over the fixed panel, or the other sash if you got a double hung or a double slider. So I do think it takes some investment in a more expensive product, but sliders are pretty popular in Atlantic Canada, and I think that there's a way to get close to those performance numbers with deeper sashes and deeper frames.
Alan, the slider still has a life, you think?
Yes, I do. I think the slider has a life. I think our market has basically asked for this, and I think most of the manufacturers in this area have actually come up with answers that would allow us to do triple glazing in sliders. So I mean, we've introduced new products in the last 2 years for single hung and single sliders that work very well. They're proven products. We didn't just go out and just try to reinvent the wheel. We went and found sliders that actually were working in the market, and so that's the direction that we took, and we're getting a good response for that as well. So and we can achieve some, even with the slider window, you can achieve some U values that are very, very impressive, very close to what you can get with casements and awnings.
Yeah, I've seen that in some products out west here as well. Andre, same thing for you guys. You're working on or developing or have high performance slider windows?
Exactly. It's all in the works right now. I think some of our other guys have kind of already started to work it or have products that have been launched, and we're not very far away from our platform. But I think it's not, the slider window is not dead. I think the 3 1/4 frame is dead. That's what dies. So I think once we start looking at the triple glaze, the sliders and hungs, the 3 1/4 is now gone, and we're all basically running at a 4 1/2-inch frame, and we're running at sometimes I've seen some guys at 6 9/16 vinyl frames. So everything's getting a lot bigger. So those 3 1/4 systems are gone, and again, not a bad thing that they will eventually be gone. The wall thicknesses have increased. 6 9/16 or 2x6 wall is still the norm, but we're adding 1 inch and 2 inch foam, and we're potentially putting the glazing outside of the window home, so it's towards the outside. So what it's kind of done is it's you're now going against your triple glaze. You're putting your glazing package outside the wall, which is no good. So the 4 1/2-inch frame or the 5 1/2-inch that I've seen some guys with 6 9/16 is putting the frame, the thermal back into the house where it needs to be, and it's adjusting for the wall thickness as well. So it's sort of like a double thing that we got to look at. So I think the slider is not dead. The 3 1/4 slider is dead. and it's putting more room for the 4.5 and or bigger.
Okay, great, good to hear, because obviously it's a popular product with lots of people. So we talked a little bit about this in our pre-chat before the call today, but triple glazed products, and the question about installation. Installation is a huge topic these days in our industry. A lot of chatter about good installation and good installation training. Triple glazing going to create some challenges for installation that maybe we aren't addressing today. Carl, what do you think? Are we seeing changes in how that's being done?
Yeah, I think maybe not in how we should be doing it, but maybe in how we are doing it. I think there's still a lot of people that are installing windows just using the nailing fin, and when you get a large triple glazed casement sash that you're operating, it can put a lot of stress, especially as Andre mentioned, with the insulation on the outside of the walls and deeper wall depth. So we're really trying to drive people towards doing a proper installation and using installation clips or screwing through the frame and shimming properly. One of the other challenges, I guess, with triples is with screwing through the frame, you've got less exposed frame area to screw through, or it makes it harder to hide those screw holes. But so those are some of the challenges, I guess, and trying to deal with triples and the installation side of it.
Alan, same challenge. Are you guys recommending alternative installation detailing when you get into some of the larger triple glazed products?
What, we're not really recommending alternate. We're just actually recommending that they follow the basic rules, and that's the biggest. If people would only just start using the basic principles of shimming and anchoring that are suggested in the A440.4, then there would not be any issue with that. It's just that we're seeing lots of examples where say somewhat lax installation principles are being applied. Things the way that the lighter 3 1/4 double plane slider was installed, and maybe you got away with it, just isn't going to cut it with the heavier triples for sure. So I think it's just adhering to the current standard. I don't think there's anything wrong with what's in A440.4 right now.
Andre, do you agree that we have good information already? Just do it the way we're suggesting or telling you to do it, and triples will be fine. Do you think that that's the case?
I 100% agree with Alan that if you just follow the basic guidelines of installation, most of the problems will go away. And the more that maybe we start to promote site glazing, the more that those things start to go away. If you look at the commercial side of the business, and I think Carl probably is best to know because they do quite a bit of it, there is a lot of site glazing. There's a tremendous amount of site glazing because they're going into buildings that are 6, 10, 12 stories high, and they have to anchor it correctly. Otherwise, it's not going to work properly. And they're wanting to make sure the glass is done in so they can actually go through the frame and anchor that window correctly in the RSO. So if we just stick to the basic guidelines of shim, screw it correctly, use the frame, the installation clips if you have to, just those basic things, a lot of the problems just completely disappear. But if we, the more we can do site glazing, though, the more we have access to the inside of the frame. Because like Carl said, once you start doing triple glaze, you're left with not a lot of frame to screw into to begin with. Specifically, if you're still using a 3 1/4 inch frame, right? So all these things that we kind of, work with our builders and that, and I think Fishers has worked on a while to try to get a installation guideline or an installation course, or the builders are just can't keep doing what they're doing right now. And I think the other problem we're starting to see too, which is to me a very big problem, is we're starting to see that the industry itself is starting to have a reintroduction of, we'll say, mediocre installers. So back in like 2012 and 13 and 14, when the industry started to cool off a bit, everyone that could say I'm a contractor and swing a hammer was kind of left the industry a bit. Now that the demand is so high, everyone that said I can swing a hammer to be a contractor is coming back to the industry saying I can do it, but nobody can't. And we're seeing a big problem where you're having every guy that thinks he can do installation start doing installation, ordering whatever they can order and putting it in, and then we're going back and saying, yeah, no, this doesn't work, and we're going to potentially see in the next 3 to 4 years some problems of install based on the fact of inexperienced people. Is what I think is going to happen. We're going to have a massive problem with that because there's not enough labor to go around to install the stuff that's currently being produced.
Our session today isn't about installation, but I'm going to ask you guys, do you feel, and simple yes or no, we're running out of time, do you think that there should be a requirement for a professionally certified installer on a project? Carl, yes or no?
I don't think there should be a requirement for it, but it would be nice if it could happen.
Alan?
Oh boy. I'll say yes.
Andre?
Same thing. I think yes.
Certified installers. Wow, that's a topic for another day. So, hey, there's a lot of talk about glass supply challenges. You guys touched on it a bit earlier in Atlantic Canada. In the West, I mean, we're seeing significant allocations of glass to manufacturers. I'm hearing, numbers around they're getting 40% of their typical glass supply, which obviously is a significant problem for everybody. Do you think, if we see triple glazing increase, pick a number, I mean, 10, 20, 30, 40% over the next 5 years or more, are we in for a really, really big problem with glass supply? Are we going to be just, we're not hearing that supply is coming online significantly more. Do you think are we going to be able to deal with it? Are the glass supply guys going to be able to supply an industry that's already challenged with 40% more glass? Carl, where do you think we're headed here?
Well, I think it is a real big concern. I do think triples are going to continue to grow in market share. I think the question is, is it going to happen in Canada or is it going to happen in North America? So if we start to see a lot of triples taking off in the US, I think we're going to have some really big supply issues. I'm not sure they'll be able to bring enough capacity on stream quickly enough to support that. If it's just Canada, maybe, and it doesn't happen too fast, maybe, and the glass manufacturers get aggressive with, the recent demand levels. If that spurs some investment in new capacity, then maybe, they can stay ahead of it. But I think it's a very big concern, and you get into, hey, we only have so much glass availability and prioritizing doubles over triples just in order to be able to get finished product out the door. Or anyway, I think it's a legitimate concern.
Yeah. Alan, I've heard some stories recently about manufacturers in the prairie shipping window frames to job sites without glass because they can't get glass fast enough, and they're going to do site installs on everything. Obviously, that's a logistical nightmare for anybody. Do you think, if we push to triples, are we headed for bigger problems here?
I believe that we're on the edge of a major problem if we don't start putting more float capacity in the market. And I really think it's time to bring a float glass plant back to Canada. That's the first thing that has to be done. I heard that there's some projects going on out in Manitoba right now with the float glass plant there. I mean, but I think to me that's just the start. I mean, I really believe that we need that one. I think we need to bring another one. There used to be a float glass plant in Quebec. I mean, we need to having another 2 float glass plants over the next 5 to 10 years on the books for the Canadian market. I think probably is. They're not going to have a problem finding a place to sell their glass.
Yeah,
I know that.
Andre, it sounds like everybody has the same concern. Do you see it as well, that we're just headed for trouble if we push to triples with the current capacity challenges?
I'd say that's correct. I think Carl said it best. If the states decide to go full triple, we're going to be in a world of problems because the supply right now is really racked. I mean, the Canadian market is one thing. We're not as big as the US, but there's still a massive impact. If we decide to go full triple across the board, we're going to have a significant impact to the supply chain. And the float plants they're not growing everywhere. They're limited, if not some have even shut down in the last 5 or 7 years and have not been replaced. So we've now created a real hindrance on the supply chain. I think, in Canada, we're going to have to look at, and this is where I think in the next couple of years, it's going to, really go quickly, is what are the alternatives? Do we have to go, because of supply chain, do we have to look at heat me or look at other options to try to reduce the amount of glass consumption that we're doing? And do we reduce the size of the units? I think there's been a lot of things within the building code too, is just reducing the number of units going into a house. There's people that just want, the average glass package is, way too much in a house sometimes. Sometimes got guys that have, 30, 40 windows in a house. Maybe that's too much. Maybe we got to limit it a bit. So all these things have to be discussed and figured out. But I think if we don't do anything, and I know the glass manufacturers they know it's coming. It's just, I think they're trying to figure out what do they do. They're not sure yet, because the investment for a glass float line, it's not in a couple millions. We're talking to 60, 50, 70, 80, $100 million. Mm-hmm. And I think what's going to happen is they're going to say, if we want them to do that, we got to prepare. The price of glass is going to skyrocket, because they're going to say, if we're putting that much money, we need to turn a profit. So that's what we're paying for glass today. Is, I think, in a couple of years is going to change dramatically, and we have to be prepared for that. And it's going to go up pretty fast.
Yeah, interesting perspective on reducing the amount of glazing in a home. I mean, we certainly don't see the architects leaning that direction. We certainly don't see the consumer leaning that direction. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. So we actually had a question come in. Ron over at Centennial says, are there any challenges seen with building triples with dissimilar gaps? So a 1/4 inch on the inside, maybe, and 3/8 on the outside. Do you guys do any of that? I've heard talk about some companies accommodating that kind of a request. Anybody doing that? Dissimilar gaps? Yeah, Andre? Yeah.
We've done it several times. Just because sometimes when the glazing cavity is not big enough to account for a real triple glaze, and we want grills, we've had to do that on a few occasions. What we try to do is put the biggest cavity to the outside. So if you have doing a 3/8 on one, or a 7/16 or on one, and the other one's a 1/4 inch, put your biggest cavity to the outside to get your best airspace. Put the small cavity on the inside, obviously, because it's less affecting. But yeah, we have to do that in certain occasions.
Well, same with us.
Yeah.
Well, we've had to do it, but we've also done it to optimize simulation results as well. So just for, if you want to use Krypton in your simulations, your airspace can't be that big. So you have to. Yeah. So you sometimes end up with an unbalanced cavities if you're using Krypton, especially if you're using a 1 1/4 or 1 3/8 IG.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys don't see a challenge with that. It's just making a unit with a couple of different cavities is not a big deal. Okay.
The challenge that we see with it is in production, because you're mixing two different width spacers, so it takes an impact in manufacturing. It's a lot more work. So
an extra step to do that switch during the fabrication.
That's right, exactly.
Okay,
it is.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're using it. It really hinders production.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so we're pretty much at our time here. So just any last thoughts on where we're headed, in the triple world, guys? Do you think it's inevitable we're going to be there? What do we see for the next few years, Carl?
I think it's coming. It has been coming. I think it's going to probably accelerate, and as an industry, we need to adapt and adopt.
Alan, same thing.
It's triples are here to stay. and they're going to grow. I don't think we're looking at exponential growth, but it's definitely going to continue to grow, and I think it's already impacting the way we do business, and I think we're just going to have to get used to the fact that this is the new normal.
So Andre, just accept it. This is where we're headed, and figure out the way to deal with it.
Yeah, this is where we're headed. I think, and we still got probably 1 or 2 years before we really start seeing the massive increase. I think by 2025, which again, it's not that far away, but still a few years away, it's where it's going to tip point, because again, the Pan American panel for the government will make things tip. Depending on where it goes and what's the actual end result, it could change the overall industry for a lot of guys.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thanks so much, guys. Thanks for your input. Really appreciate your time today. Interesting perspectives on the future of where we're headed. I think that we can all agree that is it a good thing? Well, there's probably some debate there, but that's where we're going. So if you're out there in the window business, you better start thinking about it if you haven't already. And again, thanks for your time, guys. So I'd like to thank our event sponsor, Roto Hardware. They did a supplier showcase yesterday where they presented a new product called Swiss Air. So if you're having challenges with elevation changes in your sealed units, they have an interesting new product you might want to check out. Also today at 4 p.m. Eastern, we're doing our trivia contest for the regional week. There's going to be some fabulous prizes. So if you haven't signed up for that, get in on that. And of course, live Windor, November 17th and 18th. We certainly hope to see everybody there. And again, thank you so much for your time, guys. Really appreciate it. And we'll chat soon. Thanks a bunch, guys.